That was so beautiful. Wow, right? What an episode. What an episode. What a finale. It didn't quite go where I think any of us expected, right? Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk it would have ended in such a surreal way, right? But it all kind of makes sense, right? It kind of encapsulates the central uh, themes of the show, really, and just the idea of really that it's about this marriage between Asher and Whitney. Um, and so we kind of like, we flash forward perhaps about 9 months or a little more at the point where the show has already aired or is freshly new on HDTV Go, and Whitney is pregnant. Um, and yeah, it seems that he decided to stick with Asher, right? At the end of the last episode, there was a bit of a question there, like, oh shit, like, what is she gonna do? Are they gonna break up? It seems that Asher was all in, and it seems that Whitney accepted her fate with Asher. Can't quite get rid of him, but perhaps maybe at this point she's kind of accepted that Asher's probably the best match for her, right? Um, but yeah, I mean, overall, it was a great episode, and I think it's gonna stand apart from a lot of the TV we've been seeing, and are going to see it in a while. It could possibly be even considered a classic, and definitely the imagery of this last episode, unforgettable imagery, uh, could very well hold up among classic TV shows like The Sopranos, Breaking Bad, Twin Peaks, even I mean, it's kind of early to say. Of course, it just aired, but if it has that feeling, it leaves you with these thoughts lingering in your head. It leaves you with a lot to ponder. It's unexpected. It subverts your expectations. It's like ambiguous, and it's saying so much with without being didactic. It's like it could very be one for the ages. But yeah, I liked it. So let's get in into the breakdown and actually get to the nitty gritty of it all. Let's put up the video. Right. So we start off with some Rachel Ray. Rachel at home cooking with Vincent Pastore from The Sopranos. Actually, I'm talking about The Sopranos. And another actor typically plays a wise guy, and he's got a cookbook, Wise Guy's Cookbook. And so it started off like this, and I'm thinking, okay, this is funny. Okay, we're starting off as if maybe we're watching HDTV, and then maybe we'll switch over to Green Queen in a bit, right? And then it keeps going, and it's a great representation of what these kind of shows are, right? It's if you're looking for a simple cooking show that's not confrontational, you just want to relax. Not typically my cup of tea, but it definitely pulls off that vibe, right? And then here comes Whitney and Asher. They're promoting their new show, so that's what this is about, really. It's like a little promo for their show, but it doesn't seem like Rachel or the guest are really too concerned about the show, too interested. It's mostly kind of just like, okay, the network told us to put this little promo here, have them come here. And it kind of is, even though it was revealed earlier that it's going to be on HDTV Go, I think the executive mentioned it. It really kind of, really like it's really like made for sure here. That's like for certain that this philanthropy show, this Green Queen show, isn't like the high rating focal piece of the network, right? It's kind of like pushed aside a little bit to their streaming platform, which is the Go version of HTV, right? And because the viewers of HGTV, I guess, and these kinds of shows are probably more interested and familiar with the lighthearted Rachel Ray's type of stuff, right? And so we get like these little banters between them. Whitney's trying to explain like what the eco passive housings are all about, and Rachel's like worried about, like confused about the AC, like, oh, she needs an AC, as we've seen in previous episodes with that couple that was going to buy the house, who was concerned about the AC and wanting to get an AC. Whitney again is explaining that, oh, it's like a thermos, but again, like the typical person, and usually most people, probably need an AC, right? Especially in New Mexico hot weather, right? And Rachel Ray is pretty much representing the typical viewer, and so it's kind of like pushed aside. They're kind of like in the background, and it's mostly just focused now back on the cooking. I saw someone on Reddit point out, oh look, he's cooking with some cherry tomatoes. Is it a coincidence? Is he though? I think it's just like regular sauce. I guess you can kind of, maybe there's tomatoes on the left over there. I don't know. I think that's just like coincidental. I don't think it's any reference to the cherry tomato boys, but maybe from the first episode. So yeah, he sings a little song, little standard, maybe you might say like a traditional domestic song about cooking for your wife, etc. Cutesy little moment here between Rachel and Vincent here, and yeah, like for a while I was this is like goes on for like 7 minutes or so, and I was kind of a little bit bored of it, right? And I guess it's kind of the intention, kind of to just like, put you in this space of what it would be like to watch Green Queen, coming up after the show or something like that on this network. But I definitely wanted to like move on, right? And the funny thing is that Asher and Whitney are just in the background being, I'm sure, instructed to be like, oh, just smile in the background. Don't really, engage too much. And then Asher tries to bring up the idea that, Whitney's having a baby. And because no one even brings it up. Later on, he's like, Whitney's questioning, why didn't she bring it up? Again, just showing that, like, it's kind of just they're just kind of the background, right? It's not really that important to them, Rachel. And it seems like the show is kind of like not that big of a deal as they hope for. And so again, we get the awkward moment here of them just like holding the smile, waiting for the cut to happen. They're wondering if Rachel actually watched their show. This crew member here is saying that maybe not, she's pretty busy. It's not personal. And this whole little scene here, I think, is kind of just representing the difference in the production values of, an official HGTV show, an official like top line marquee show for the network versus their little show for HGTV Go, right? They have these crew members who maybe are more rigid with their, with their protocol. Like she's asking her, like, can I touch you to get the mic off? And she's like, yeah. And so, and of course they're concerned about how they look and if their show is even going to get much publicity from this. And then just focusing more on their workers here, giving some light to them, as opposed to the central figures of the show, which have the privilege of actually living in this nice house, right? This eco house. And then we cut to, maybe sometime later, a Shabbat dinner here. Seems that, we've definitely advanced some time in the relationship with Whitney and Asher, and it seems that at this point Whitney is fully embraced the Jewish lifestyle, right, of celebrating the Shabbat here. As we, previous the previous episodes, right, Whitney kind of like blew it off a little bit one time when Asher wanted her. He bought the bread and he was like, "Oh, we should have the dinner," and she's like, "Oh no, I got stuff to do." She didn't take it so seriously. Again, kind of like, which reinforced like the idea that what her mom was criticizing her for like kind of like dressing up as a Jewish wife and not really taking it seriously. But now it does seem like maybe she has grown a little bit in that regard and like actually taking it more seriously, the religion. Although, you still kind of, I still suspect that she's not completely on board. It's more of again a performative action, perhaps. It's definitely a point in her life. I think she's kind of like settled down to it. Not really being as rebellious or critical of it as perhaps she would be in the past, as we've seen earlier on in the series. And then they talk about just art in general. They talk about how Kara quit being an artist, and Whitney's like kind of like upset about that. So apparently, like, Kara got interviewed like for an article saying how she felt she was being re-traumatized when she was selling her art. She was selling her art to these evil collectors, etc. Whitney kind of criticizes that, saying that like, oh, like now she's complaining because she never got to sell her art in her art show, so now she's complaining about it, criticizing her being inauthentic. And but I feel like the point of this scene is more to show that like Whitney's kind of being insensitive towards an artist's decision to do that. And she wants to like justify how she's willing to be more, to compromise because she wants her show to be a success and everything. She wants to feel like she's being a good artist and doing the right thing, and so she's kind of deflecting any insecurities towards Kara, who decided to reject that. As we saw in the previous episode, Kara was definitely compromised a bit for the money, being in Whitney's show. But then, we saw the camera zoom in. She was definitely perplexed and questioning her decisions, and definitely uneasy with the idea of continuing being a partner in crime with Whitney here. And then the thing here is that Asher's kind of saying like, oh, like, people process things in different ways. She didn't, as a Native person, she didn't want to continue to be exploited, etc. Compares it to Jews and Mel Brooks doing the producers, but he can't quite articulate, what it means, what art means, and what art is about. Because he's kind of also kind of in a bit performing as a part of the theme of the show, performing the good, liberal progressive husband, and trying to explain art when he himself can't quite articulate it. And so then he goes on to bring out a present he has for Whitney here, right? And Whitney's all excited, right? So, we see here a little peek under her veil again, right? Whitney's kind of showing off a little bit of her narcissism. She says like, "Oh yeah, I do deserve a present," but she's expecting something nice for her, and then Absher's like, it's actually model home, and we're giving the home to Abshir. We're actually give it to him so he can own, so he doesn't have to rent anymore, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. And it's to him, it's like a gift to Whitney, more like on principle, right? The gift is like seeing her. He says seeing her face when Abshir realizes that it's going to be his house. It's like a gesture to show that he's grown and he's a better person, right? And he's thinking about others. He has empathy. That's that gesture, and it's a really great. It's great. It's an amazing thing, but it's more so for Asher to feel good about himself, really, right? It's more so for him to like show that to Whitney, hey, look, I'm the ideal husband you've wanted, right? This is me. I've become it. I'm no longer bringing you down. I'm the perfect husband. The liberal, do-good husband that is empathetic to lower classes, etc. Which Whitney, I guess, responds because she feels like, yeah, I guess so. That's what I wanted, but you can kind of tell that maybe she's a little bit unsure about it, about doing that. Like that's something that she probably never even entertained or thought about. She even questions it if they can even afford it, because she's like, oh, we're not taking money from my parents anymore, she says. Although I suspect they probably have a safety net there. If they ever are in trouble, they probably will have that Whitney's parents, the safety net. And so they go and give the news to Abshir, right? And so they're expecting some thankfulness. They're expecting Abshir to be so elated and happy and like grateful for what they're doing. And really they're acting as saviors here. They're like Abshir's saviors, Again, a continued theme of the show of these characters trying to be the saviors of the community. And they've come full circle here now, and they've realized, oh, we can actually be a savior to Abshir. And again, they're treating it more like a pin in their cap or in their sachet of like a medal that they have. Like, oh, like we are good people. We've actually gave the home away to this Abshir here, who we were gonna initially bulldoze and kick him out, right, and build an eco home. And Abshir doesn't quite seem super elated, right? They're a bit confused about that, because he was expecting them to like come in and evict him, and he wasn't. I'm sure he was preparing mentally to do that, to leave, and perhaps he says he wasn't quite ready when they got here. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting you to get here so soon. He wasn't prepared to move right away. But I think he has been making preparations. Of course, he would have he would have to, right? And then be thinking that, and there's someone in the home. Not quite clear who it is. He says it's a friend. We can surmise perhaps it's a friend that's going to help him move out. Maybe a friend that needs a place to stay. This is the clearest shot we get of him. I don't believe we've seen this guy anywhere else. I can't really pinpoint. He looks similar to other people. He looks kind of similar to another guy we see later on, but it's not him. I think it's just a different character. So, we can speculate. But then, I'm sure he is a little bit more practical about the matter. Like, oh, wait a second. So now, who's going to pay the property tax? And it seems that Asher wasn't really thinking about that at the moment, but he was like, oh yeah, we'll take care of that for now. And Abshir wants the paperwork right away. Which again, Abshir is a practical man. Earlier on in the previous episode, he made sure to ask Whitney to have it on paper that he won't be having to pay rent, right? Because I'm sure he's he's been in situations perhaps he's been taken advantage of like that, right? And then, it's just logically it's best to have these things in paper. You can't just take people on their word, especially people who have this power over you, right? Whether it's your landlord or whatever, right? So, but again, they're kind of oblivious to how this all looks, and they're just like, oh, like we're gonna give him the key, he's gonna be all happy. But again, it's more treating it like a good thing to to affirm their savior complex, right? And Asher goes back in, isn't super friendly, because again, they're not really friends. They think he calls him a friend of the family, but Abshir doesn't think of him that way. Like, why would you think of your landlord or whatever? Like, you aren't gonna be thinking of your landlord as your friend unless I mean, I'm sure there's particular cases, but not in this case, of course, right? And the relationship, the dynamic between the owner of the land versus the renter is never typically a friendly matter, right? But they're trying to, again to portray themselves as good people, as the good ones. And I think they mentioned how like the house is worth like $300,000, and it got me thinking like, oh, I wonder like if Abshir might be even deciding to like, oh, maybe he'll get the title over, to sign the paperwork over to his name as quickly as possible, and then maybe even sell it. Maybe Abshir could sell that and then move somewhere else. Maybe that'd be a move for him, and then he won't be staying here forever like they said they want him to. Like, they're like, oh, we want you to stay here forever, almost like treating him like a little pet or something, which is pretty demeaning, right? And again, they're just like unaware of the language they're using, like how it comes across. So now we're back at their home, and we get a little peek of like, oh yeah, at this point they are compromising a little bit when it comes to maintaining their eco-friendly home and maintaining the I guess the passive certification, although I don't quite know the details of that. But for their baby room, they are like separating it from the other house in regards to the airflow, the air pressure, and they're installing, guess what, an air conditioner in the baby room, to make sure the baby's safe, because as Asher says, they don't want to gamble with the baby's life. And of course, at this point when they're having a baby, they're you got to be concerned about the baby, and so it's good. The idea of like maintaining this passive house kind of like becomes secondary at that point, which is representative of what other homeowners probably want in their homes too. It's and how it's not quite an ideal home like they're portraying it as, right? And she's concerned that like when she shows off the house, people will be concerned about that and think that like passive homes aren't ideal for babies, for children in the house, and so she wants to hide it. And so she tells Freckle to like cover up the little device there, the thermostat, whatever it is. Again, kind of showing off kind of like the hypocrisy or contradictory nature of these characters. And then he offers a gift, a dream catcher, typical, I guess you might say typical or stereotypical type of gift for babies, and particularly regarding like native gifts, or artifacts, or art pieces, whatever. But she sees that it's reeds made in China, so it's not really an authentic one. It's just like a fabricated one. I guess you can say how their marriage, their show, their house is all kind of fabricated too, right? It's not really authentic to the land or the peoples. And she's like, oh, well, we're only accepting after the gifts after the baby's born. And Freckle reveals that he knows that it's a boy. But apparently no one was they didn't tell anybody. I feel like they didn't tell anybody. I feel like Asher didn't tell him. He says he must have overheard it or something. And so I think it is a bit significant that the gender of the kid is a boy. Because it kind of represents perhaps, an ideal version of what Asher wants to be. Like, I'm gonna bring up another version of me that's even better than me, and that's the whole point of being a parent, right? And I think that comes in a little later. We'll see who he brings that up, and we'll definitely get into that more later on the meaning of that. But this guy here, who's like, I guess just a hired hand for the day, that Freckle doesn't really know that well, says that, oh, he's gonna tell everybody that it's a boy, which is like a funny scene, because like you kind of expect him to like crack up and joke and reveal that's just a joke. It's like, oh no, I'm just joking. You kind of expect that, but he doesn't. He just says it up front, stares at them, and walks away like, I'm going to be at the car. See you later. And then really weird moment. Asher comes back in. It's like, that was horrible. You got to fire him, and he says he'll fire him. And like, it's a funny comedic moment that kind of subverts your expectations for a joke like that. But it also reminds me, and I think it's intentional, of an earlier episode where Whitney has this banter with the crew member, joking about how he could do the job, and then he jokes about how he'll just quit, But of course, they reveal that they're just joking. Whitney still has the upper hand in that little scenario. As the boss in that situation. So it kind of echoes that scene, the idea of like, two classes, the working class versus the owning class, at odds with each other here. But this time it subverts it by not even making a joke, but like him just being like, oh, like just disrespecting them in that way. And perhaps even just like a little bit of like, you could interpret it as kind of like a rebellious action from this crew member here, or a lower class worker here, who doesn't want to respect the privacy of the owners here, in a way to like challenge the elite's expectation of privacy that they have, versus someone in lower class who may not have that privilege for privacy or something like that, right? I mean, you can interpret it in different ways, but I think in general it's just kind of like a funny moment that we kind of subverts our ideas of what's good, what he should have done, what he should have like been joking, right? But he's not. And then and again, it still also kind of shows that like that Asher still has these little angry outbursts, right? He's not completely, a perfect husband right now, right? Little angry moment. Still needs some anger management, right? Then we go to Whitney and Asher in bed, singing to the baby, right? Or I guess like doing some Hebrew hymns or chants or something, and shining this light on the belly. I'm not quite sure what the benefit of that is, but I'm sure they believe it has some benefit to shine that little light on the belly for the baby inside. And if you look, I wasn't quite sure what that pattern is on the light. It almost looks like an earth or something, but I did zoom in earlier, and it looks like little bees or something, like little bees in there. This could be just a fun little image. But what's important about the scene is that he says there's a little me inside you. Again, we know it's a boy. So he feels like this is a little him. Not just someone, not just a baby, of a combination of them two. he's focusing on the idea that it's going to be a little him, centralizing himself in a way, um, and perhaps maybe the idea that like he's gonna be the best father he can be, in order, even though he's made mistakes in the past, he's gonna make sure that the baby is the best version of him. That's his goal as a father here. And Whitney, of course, doesn't seem to like be completely on board with his viewpoint there, but kind of just is a bit passive here as she's become really at this point, right? She's become a little more passive, kind of like has succumbed to the and settled down into the idea of just being more of the traditional domestic wife in this situation. But you can tell that she's still like perhaps has some concerns and is questioning the whole idea perhaps of them being a happily married couple, but whether or not she's fully on board with it, she's going to go through with it, she kind of just accepts like this is it, this is my life now, gotta make do with it in a way, right? And now we get to the moment that completely, you can say flips everything on its head, the whole series almost, in the sense of like what's reality, what's fiction. You could, when I was watching this, I was thinking, okay, this must be a dream, right? We go up here and we see Asher on the ceiling. And when I first saw this, I was like, wait, is there like a mirror on the ceiling or something? Is this one of those, like some people have mirrors on top of their beds? And then, no, so it kind of like really throws you off. It's like, wait, what is going on? This is so surreal. This is, we've never seen anything quite this fantastical in the show thus far. And it's play with the idea of curses, right? And like for the, like whether the Nala was in fact had these special powers, the chicken situations, what it all meant. But you could always kind of explain it as kind of just coincidence, or like there was really no supernatural element evident in the show, right? Up until this point, right? But then throughout here, this whole scene, Asher's trying to like rationalize it, right? There must be something wrong with the pressure in the house, the air pressure. There's an air pocket. He tells Whitney to go and open up the baby room to level out the pressure in the whole house. So he's trying to rationalize it all, and as viewers, so are we, right? And the longer it goes on, the less likely it seems to be a dream, right? Like, oh wait, like if this is a dream sequence, it would cut, at some point, it would be like, oh, Whitney or Ash will wake up and and like, oh, that was just a dream, right? But it goes on, and it stays in this mood for the rest of the episode. So you could say, yeah, it's just a dream, and right before this, this is all Whitney's dream, or it could be Asher's dream, could be Dougie's dream, whoever. Likely one of their two dreams, right? And it just starts when they wake up, right? And then it doesn't. The episode ends in their dream, but I don't think that's the spirit of the show. I don't think that's really what Benny, Safdie, Neil Fielder, Emma Stone really want to get across here. I think they're playing with fiction. The whole idea of the show is to play with our expectations of what is fiction and reality in the show, but also just to play with the narrative in that way, whether it's being them performing for their TV show, them performing for their friends, for the people on social media, etc., for themselves in their marriage, what's reality, what's fiction. That's just a major theme of the show. And then this episode just kind of like takes a little further. It's like, oh, like this is an art piece, right? This is art. This is a representation of reality, not necessarily reflecting reality in the truest sense. It could reflect reality thematically in a very true way, but literally doesn't have to necessarily have to represent reality. And we can interpret this in many ways, of course. But I feel like the show has always like kind of hinted at being having some supernatural elements, whether or having something off kilter, right? Whether it's the camera, how it follows the characters, who's behind the camera. Sometimes there's people looking into the camera. Just the shifts of perspective, etc. With whether it's a TV show or whether they're performing for the camera or not, or for each other. So I don't know, I find this exciting. I like this. I like that they made this turn. They went somewhere where you didn't quite expect, and they have these really cool little moments here. Like, look at that. Like, yeah, it's cool how they did this. I'm sure there's like some wires here that they cut out in editing, and then there's probably like different just perspective shifts. That perhaps I'm pretty sure they built a whole set that looks like their room, and they flipped it over and they turned the camera. Perhaps they turned the camera upside down so it looks like everything's upside down. So some kind of, I'm sure, a mix of some like computer work, but a lot of probably just practical work too that we've seen in the past in other movies. But it looks really cool, and it's something that we really haven't quite seen, before. A new take on a marriage kind of dissolving and people being pulled apart, literally. And so they're trying to get to the phone, and of course Whitney's like in full pregnant mode right now. She's like about to go into labor. Everyone's stressed out, and you really feel it. It's a really stressful situation, because the situation is so like, it's so out there and it's so like unexpected, like that. Although it's not, because it's not super realistic, right? It's not super relatable in that sense, but it's kind of relatable just like emotionally, right? And you would feel, if you were Asher being stuck on the wall there, or your partner was, like, you would feel this anxiety, and I totally felt it. And then so Whitney's definitely like in this anxiety mode as well, and like she's even crouching on the ground, trying to get out of the house. They think that's better to get out of the house. You have to get to the phone. And so it's a little bit of a mission here, a little bit of a heist mission here of him trying to crawl, trying to pull himself down to get the phone. They end up using a vacuum cleaner, Dyson. But the performances, they go all out, right? You can some good performances here, and can't quite get to the phone. He can't quite grab it. And so she has contractions, and they decide to call the doctor, right? And Asher's like telling her to call the doctor first. She wants to call the doula, Moses. Coincidentally, his name is Moses. And so the dynamic here is a little bit, it shows kind of like a shift, right? Like earlier on the series, like Whitney was totally in control of the relationship, right? She was kind of like the one at the head, and Asher was also by the end also was doting and wanting to do whatever she said. There was also a lot of conflict, of course. But here, Asher, now that he's like kind of like ascended to being the perfect ideal husband in his mind, is kind of commanding Whitney, to do call a doctor or go get the vacuum, etc. And of course, Whitney's kind of like in this vulnerable position. She's going to labor, so of course she's not really gonna combat him too much. But she does decide to call the doula instead first, So it kind of just shows how she's perhaps more interested in maybe a more spiritual connection with somebody versus more practical, scientific, analytical resolution, as Asher here is trying to get to here with a doctor instead of the doula. And so it continues, right? You think, okay, maybe once he gets out of the house, he'll stop floating upwards, right? But no, he's out here, and this is cool. Like, I imagine there's probably like some magnets, perhaps, or probably just like some attachment to the back of his shirt, something attached to the ceiling here of this overhang. But it's believable. I mean, it looks real, I mean, we know it's fake, but I totally buy what's happening here. Like, and it's just funny imagery, humorous imagery, absurd imagery. It's like a panic mode, 100%. It just reflects the idea of like this couple panicking at the idea of like, oh, the mother's going into labor, the father is anxious, what's going to happen. Of course, we later see Asher's excited, but there's this force that's pulling against him, right? And so what does that actually mean? I mean, we can interpret it so many different ways. Is this the curse coming back? Is this the curse finally fulfilling its purpose, like kind of belated, but could it, is this Nala's doing? Is this Dougie's doing? When he cursed Asher, but he's being repelled, and it seems that like he's being, at first, something is taking him out of the house, and perhaps he needs to get out of the house. But as we see later, it's basically also getting him into the sky and into the space, right? So whatever force is against him wants him out of this world completely. You can see it as mostly like trying to. It's the idea is that the force is trying to get him away from Whitney as far as possible, and to do that means going into space, right? How far away? What's the first thing you get from somebody? You would have to go into space to get the first away from them. An exaggeration of perhaps the anxiety of what Whitney is feeling, of like still feeling like Asher is like crushing her down. It's kind of a weight on her life and her relationship, and she needs him out, even though she can't quite express it, and she hasn't ever been able to really in a direct way, right? With episode 9, she let the TV show do it for her, and then it turns out Asher doubled down and like decided to commit to her like 110%. But then is that doubling down on Asher's part kind of like coming back to bite him, and now there's some supernatural force that's like saying like kind of like combating that, like saying like, oh, like you're going too hard, Asher, like you need to get out of here. We'll get more into interpretations, but it's fun, like fun imagery here, seeing this happening, and you feel like I felt kind of like uneasy in my stomach, like almost like that feeling you get when like you're at somewhere where very high and you have feelings of falling and stuff. Like definitely felt that here, and it's like a familiar like feeling of afraid of heights feeling, but also like it's something I've never seen in a show or experienced, the idea of like someone being pulled upwards, falling upwards, but it's like instinctually, like it's devastating. It feels, it's like super fear inducing, right? And then at this moment it's like, oh shit, he's gonna slip, and even in earlier on when he was just on the ceiling of the bedroom, I was wondering, is he gonna be like sucked through the window or something? Because it seemed there was like a skylight up there. Like, is he gonna have to? He's gonna fly up into the sky? What's gonna happen? Or is it just the house he has to get out of? But nope, he has to. He's gonna go all the way up there, and he grabs onto this tree branch, and you feel it. It hurts. There's a big thud. Um, like damn, dude. Some good effects. Like, yeah, it's not like the best CG or the best visual effects. Some especially like later on when he's in the sky sometimes, but it works. I don't mind it. And there's a lot of it that does look really good too. He's gonna be up there. He's telling Whitney to just go to the hospital. He'll be there. They're kind of like still in this delusional phase that everything's gonna be all right. Whitney's like in this panic mode, of course. She's kind of like okay, yeah, he'll show up. He'll show up for sure. She's not really accepting reality, the reality that he's flowing up into the sky, which is so unreal, surreal, in fact. Again, playing with reality and fiction, like the show likes to do. So she and the doula go to the hospital, and on the way, Moses here calls Dougie, of course. So they need that third guy. You need the third lead, really, of the show, right? He really, like, in a way, kind of he's a good foil for both Whitney and Asher, and kind of like almost binds them together in a bit. Also, kind of holds the it's like a trinity, really. Those three for the show. And so Dougie shows up. Before that, we got some bystanders here, some neighbors, like wondering what's happening. No one quite saw him fly up there, except for the doula, of course, and Whitney. But so they're wondering how he got up there, and he's trying to explain. And of course, he sounds like a mad person. Dougie shows up in his nice sports car here, so he's used that nice paycheck for the show to buy himself a new car. He's living the producer life, the TV producer, big time TV producer life. He suspects that Asher, as I guess any rational person would suspect, Asher's just freaked out about being a father, right? So he's like, oh, just take your time, come down as you can. He's gonna call. He calls the fire department. And Asher's trying to explain the situation, which is unbelievable. So of course, they don't believe him. But even there, like, he's like, hey, look, I get sucked up. Look, when I lift my legs up, But I guess you can just explain that as Asher being delusional and like himself, even just stretching up that way. But it's pretty intense. I mean, I definitely feel for Asher here, right? And so, yeah, he goes, asks about it. There's like, they don't know. They don't give him much information. We get back to the hospital. Whitney's kind of freaked out, of course, but she's going to be taken care of. So she's kind of left out of loop here. They're not quite explaining everything that's going on, but she does end up getting a C-section, which I think it is a surprise to her, I think, later on, but probably to do with some condition she has, perhaps. And she had an ectopic pregnancy earlier on in the previous episode, right? So probably the best way for her to have a baby. So he was explaining that his dad also ran away when he was being born. So he's familiar with this, I guess, or he understands what Asher's going through. And he also has kind of like a reductive viewpoint of the difference between men and women when they're having children, how like women feel more attached because it's coming, they give birth, while men think of it as more of an abstract thing to be a father. which is just Dougie's personality to kind of be, I guess, kind of gender essentialist in that way, dividing men and women in those neat little categories. And Asher's trying to explain here, like, you got to put a net on me. The firefighters think he's fucking crazy. And then here we have Dougie asking to put a microphone up there because he wants to record this, right? And he's saying, "Oh, it's so we can help negotiate. You know, I can help negotiate him so he can come back down easy, like safely." Of course, the firefighter is suspicious that he's just trying to do a stunt for the show, and he's like, "No, like this is my friend. Of course not." Again, when he's without her husband, without Asher, feels alone, feels like he's being prodded here and stuff like that, and I guess they're deciding to go with the section at this point. We got the microphone there, and of course, Dougie wants to get this all recorded because he, perhaps this could be part of the season 2. The opening of season 2 of Green Queen. Asher's afraid of becoming a father, taking on responsibility. He climbed up a tree. That's what's going through his head because Dougie's always thinking about that, right? That's all about the show, the drama, the conflict of the show, making it better. Because as I said, they are going to do a second season, right? With the new kid. So he goes and puts up that net. He just kind of lays it on his back here. Doesn't really do it as Asher wants it. So of course Asher's kind of pissed off about that, stressed out. And they're pretty much getting ready to just get him down by cutting the tree branch here. So we got the firefighter with the chainsaw here, and I guess is the best option. I don't know. I mean, it would be really hard to pull him off. Some kind of wild man who's grabbed onto a tree branch. They did mention they could have the guy jokingly was like, "Oh, we have to sedate him or something." So maybe that's another way, but then that might be dangerous because he might slip or something in a wrong way. I don't know. But they're cutting the tree branch. Now, this is the climax of the moment. This is the scariest moment for Asher, because this is his final moment here to save himself, right? And no one's gonna believe him anyways, but he'll try his hardest. And Nathan does put on maybe his best performance. Definitely good performance here. You really feel like he's fucking stressed out and at his limit here, right? And it's scary, dude. I'm freaking scared. Jeez. I don't want to go into space without wanting to, without a spacesuit. They cut the tree branch, but he lets go, right? I wonder if he had held on with the weight of the tree branch would it had had enough gravity to kind of have him come down? Would he have floated up into space with the tree branch? But I guess in the heat of the moment, he panicked and perhaps I guess the physics of this in this fictional world could be that the tree branch has gravity, but he doesn't. So the tree branch was being pulled down while he was constantly being pulled up. So I guess maybe he had no choice. He didn't have the grip enough to strong enough to hold on to the branch. So the branch comes down and he goes up. And at this point, I guess everybody's like, what the fuck? And they get the drone up there high to get pictures of him. So it seems that they have it on camera, right? So even if people who aren't there aren't believing it, they have some video footage now of this supernatural event, of Asher flying to the sky. At this point, like Dougie's probably like, oh wait, like a bit kind of freaked out in his head, but it's kind of cool headed right here, right? Like he's like, oh, calm down, Asher. He's like yelling at him, even though he probably can't hear him. Maybe in his head he's like, oh, we'll just follow him with the drone and he'll float back down or something. I don't know what he's thinking in his head. We go with the operation here. Just as Asher is floating into the sky, there's he's screaming. This is like, feels like a very tragic moment and a helpless, hopeless moment here for Asher, and in fact, it is, right? And it's kind of sad. Like it is sad, but it's like so like out of this world, literally, and unbelievable and like unexpected that it's like a train wreck, fascinating thing to watch, right? Not the best thing to watch a C-section, but there it is. Beautiful baby boy. And pretty much as Asher exits Earth's atmosphere, his and Whitney's child is born. And here, like, Whitney's not even seems to be concerned too much about Asher's whereabouts. Doesn't even care to have the doula back in the room with her. She's smiling, she's happy, she's having, she feels relieved that the labor is over and she has the baby now. And what's exactly in her head? She feels like she's gonna start a new chapter, and she's a happy mother with a baby. She's crying, tears of happiness, right? They ask her about whether they should ask if Asher's around, if her husband's here, and she's just like, sure, But it's not really like super enthusiastic about it, right? So it's like it kind of indicates like, oh, like yeah, it seems that she's not super in love with Asher, as she hasn't been throughout the series, and she still isn't maybe. But of course also she's probably in the moment of like just had a fucking baby, so that could cloud your feelings and emotions a little bit, right? Here Asher looks up, looking up towards the sun, towards the sky, towards the stars. Does he see some divine being out there? An alien, perhaps? No, I don't think there's aliens. I think it's like more spiritual. I don't know. Could just be him realizing, shit, this is it. I'm dead. This is my final moments. And pretty horrible, pretty horrific stuff. Early on, I think he even says, like, in the subtitles, maybe we can go back to it. He says, if I can come down, if I come down now, or something like that. Like, as if he's, like, speaking to God or some higher power. Like, pleading to, like, be able to come down. Like, if I come down, I'll maybe he's trying to say, like, if I come down now, I swear I'll be the best person ever. I won't do anything bad ever again. I'll be the perfect husband, the perfect man. Maybe it's a little later, but that's so he's pleading, of course. At the end of your life, you plead with some divine force, right? Perhaps, even an atheist like me may find himself doing that at the last moment of my life, right? I don't know. Let's not think about that. Anyway, so Dougie here, he's fucking he's in shambles now. He's like, the friend here is like, oh, like we got the drone back or something. We got connection to the drone. Check out the image. And of course, Dougie's like not even thinking about it anymore. Like this is his lowest point, and he finally breaks down completely, and he feels super guilty. He feels guilty for what's happening to Asher. He did say I cursed you in a previous episode. Soon after, Asher kind of like called him, because Dougie called him out on cosplaying as a good guy, right? As a good man. While Asher replied by saying, "Oh, you're the one to talk. You're the one who, pretty much murdered your wife, right? Cosplaying as good. You're the one who drove drunk, and killed your wife." And so, you know, in the heat of the moment, like once he dropped off Asher, he like just said, "I cursed you," to Asher. So maybe he's thinking he's the one who's responsible for this. And he's also bullied Asher throughout his life. He's also, in general, he feels like he's been a bad dude. Perhaps he's accepting the idea that he was responsible for his wife's death at this point, and he's saying he's sorry, and it was all because of me. He just wants to be left alone. It's like, he's down, very down. So that kind of like completes Dougie's arc there. Like, I think he's in fully believing in the curse situation, and perhaps maybe he's even going to come to think that, oh, maybe part of the curse or the karma, the bad karma I'm getting now is that I have to live with the fact that I was horrible to my friend and he's dead now. Meanwhile, Whitney is just more relaxed now and content. Asher's out there in space. Dougie is fucking sobbing. Whitney fucking happy. She's got a new baby. She's got a new life. She's not even. I don't even think she's thinking about Asher. Like, does it really look like she's thinking about Asher or anybody else right now? I think this completes kind of her character arc of like, she's kind of like an narcissist, right? Typically just thinking about herself, right? And for her to be happy, and maybe Asher had to sacrifice himself. Maybe he's become a sacrifice for the benefit of Whitney here. Maybe there was some spiritual, supernatural force using Asher as a sacrifice for Whitney and favor Whitney for whatever reason. But this shot is beautiful. So beautiful. Just like, look at that. This definitely reminds me of the Star Child, the Star Baby from 2001: Space Odyssey. At the end of that movie, there was a little baby in a little bubble floating above Earth, which kind of represented the evolution of humankind. Perhaps Asher here is representing the worst of mankind, worst of humankind. He tried at the end there, right? He tried to be the perfect man, the perfect husband, and it seems that wasn't enough. It seems that all the bad deeds still caught up to him. Perhaps that curse that was inflicted by Nala, finally caught up to him, and he's being ejected from the world. Perhaps the spirit of the world, the spirit of Española, perhaps was behind this. Maybe some deity from this land, maybe some indigenous spirit used him as a way to get his baby into Whitney. I don't know, and maybe the baby is becoming be pivotal to the world somehow. Maybe, I don't know. Or it could just be like an indifferent universe, and maybe this scene here, we've got another little moment of the camera kind of like flowing and acting as if they're an entity, right? We've seen before where the camera feels like it's voyeuristically spying or viewing on the characters. Here it's as if there's like some kind of spirit in the hospital, witnessing the birth of Whitney's and Asher's child. Now they're rowing back to Española, taking a stroll. Perhaps a spirit of the indigenous person who used to who resided here, who originally lived here, visiting the gentrified Española, or just witnessing it and going back to their home, which is now the eco-friendly Whitney home. Dougie here is explaining to the police what's going on. Of course, they're incredulous, like, well, what's going on here? The neighbors they're just onlooking. They're wondering what's going on. They think it's a movie, and they're like, "Oh no, this is part of the HD TV show." And so, they just think it's all like a stunt that's for a cool new TV show they're gonna watch at home. Green Queen, watch Asher fly, and then back to the camera floating about back inside the house. It's cool that we don't really see the reflection of the camera person. They probably took ages to erase that from the mirror there with special effects. Or maybe there's this particular angle, maybe just because the camera's right where the door is, you don't see it anyways. And it looks like, to me, I think it's kind of like a spirit of the spirit of the town or of the peoples, indigenous people the native people who lived there, prior to colonization, going back into the home, reclaiming their place, reclaiming their home from Whitney and Asher, and perhaps they will always be haunting there. And who knows? Maybe will Whitney go back? Will she be haunted by Asher and that ghost? Will she move on? And it would seem to me that season 2 is going to be a success, and even more so than season 1. I would seem. It seems that Whitney was complaining that no one was watching season 1 because it's on HD TV Go and no one knew how to access it. But after this debacle, after this whole thing, after getting the footage of Asher flying into space, and Whitney now with a baby, I'm pretty sure it's gonna go viral. I'm pretty sure that's gonna in this world, that show is not gonna be super popular, and she's gonna become the actual Green Queen, and probably take advantage of that and live it up and feel vindicated for everything she's done, right? Validated for everything she's done. I mean, that's what I imagine could happen. How do we interpret this? Him flying to space, being separated. I mean, I don't think it's quite as simple as Dougie sees it. As first off, was Asher being anxious about fatherhood. It could just be literally, like I said, the curse showing itself at last. That although Nala just specifically mentioned that she wanted the chicken to disappear, maybe some entity was listening in and decided to act on it, and at the high point of Asher's relationship with Whitney, this entity decided to enact their revenge on Asher, and spit him out into space, pull him out. Could be something brewing inside of Whitney that she wanted to repel Asher this whole season, and some kind of entity, agreed with her, obliged her, and was like, yeah, sure, I'll amplify your emotions and I'll act as the power to repel your husband away. Figuratively, it's just the idea that these people perhaps are toxic for each other. You couldn't, earlier on I was thinking, the Asher and Whitney, have these flawed, awful characteristics of being self-centered or being oblivious, unaware of their actions, of how they're, who they really are. And so they just breed toxicity within each other. And perhaps it's best that they are separated, and so this is just an exaggeration of that, right? Like let's just have an episode where like it culminates in them just like to be their best selves, they have to be completely apart from each other, or at least for Whitney to be her best self. Um, you could see it as Asher realizing or coming to terms with the fact that like that he can't really be a good person. He can try his hardest, but inherently he's bad. He's like he doesn't deserve Whitney, Could this be we can go back to the idea of this being a nightmare, right? A dream sequence. This anxiety of like no matter how hard he tries, he doesn't deserve Whitney, and he's gonna be eventually repelled or eventually split up, and in this little sequence here, he's literally being ejected as far away as possible from her. But I like to think more of it like this happened within the reality of the show. I think it makes the show more interesting, as opposed to it being an actual dream sequence, because that just kind of takes away the heft and emotion of the episode, right? But yeah, man, it's a wild ending. Like in a way, it reminds me of just like the perplexed, and emotional devastation that I felt at the end of Twin Peaks: The Return. I guess I won't go too much in details of that, but it ends with a big scream, and you don't quite know where it leaves off, like what's going to happen next, and everyone's confused. So it kind of had this that emotional punch too. This scene, this episode, where it's like kind of ambiguous. It is ambiguous. You don't quite know exactly what the show's like trying to say. Maybe they don't have an exact thing, right? Maybe Benny and Nathan and Emma here just playing more off vibes and emotion, and the idea of these characters are what propel you to the story, right? You want to see what these characters, how they're going to react to situations, and like the politics and of all of it are kind of like almost secondary to this relationship Dougie, Asher, and Whitney have. But it's definitely something I haven't seen before, and for that reason alone, it's exciting. But it all like comes together with the performances, with the characters, with like the visual aesthetics of it all, like the mixing of fiction, reality TV versus performing for your spouse or for your neighbors. That it is a bit of a satire on performative liberalism, right? Trying to be good or be perceived as good in the eyes of liberal people or just people in general. Also, there's themes of like not judging people. Like, Dougie may seem like a scummy guy, but he has he has real emotions. He was trying to improve himself. Asher was trying to improve himself. Whitney had a lot of good, had some good in her too. Had some good ideas. Wanted to be better, but then we're all flawed. It's it's a portrait. This whole show is a portrait of just flawed humanity, and we did get some views of Abshir and Nala and their family and what they're going through. So it was good to see that. We get to see like Kara's trajectory throughout the show and how she had to compromise for her art and eventually decided to quit art and altogether. And in a way, like that's also what the show is about, like creating art and what does that mean and what do we have to compromise to create art to put this show on Showtime. It seems that Showtime did seem to take a risk. This isn't your conventional show, so it definitely is nice they did so. Of course, they've been Showtime has allowed stuff like Twin Peaks on there, like the David Lynch stuff. So like they seem to be accustomed to take some chances, but also like they're owned by Paramount now, so it doesn't seem like they have much to lose because they're just part of a bigger network now, right? A bigger and who knows, people were even saying that Paramount's going to be sold off eventually anyways. But whatever the case, it's I think it's definitely a fascinating and fulfilling artistic endeavor, as Asher might say. And I enjoyed it all the way. I think pretty much every episode I liked. And sure, we could have seen maybe more from other people's perspective. You could critique that perhaps we could have seen more of the community, more from Abshir and Nala, more from Kara, more from other people, But again, this was like kind of like a Nathan, Benny's, Emma vehicle, in which they're kind of like, in a way, like it was from their perspective as like these white liberal artists, entertainers who have been working in the industry for a while now, and so they're showing us their perspective, and it is a bit bold of them to actually kind of comment on themselves in that way. The show does, and even in the industry that they work in, and they do it in a humorous, entertaining way, and it is surprisingly, this show is funnier than you would think, how based on how heavy and dark it can get, but yeah, I mean, I guess we can go down. Oh yeah, one other thing I want to say is the music at the end here, which is interesting. So it is by Alice Coltrane. Jai Ramachandra is the song that plays during the end here, and it has come up in earlier episodes too. And Benny Safdie has talked about it, how he feels like this song in particular. He feels that it's like Alice, like she has like this knowledge beyond any human or something, like I think he describes it more kind of like godly divine music that's like knowledgeable beyond what we can understand. It feels very, very like that, like this is ethereal, almost godly music, from the perspective of some higher power singing. And I did look up some lyrics. It can be translated. It's like she's like a Hindu jazz musician, right? And so the song here is about Lord Rama. And the Rama, according to Wikipedia, is a major deity in Hinduism. He's the seventh and one of the most popular avatars of Vishnu. In Rama-centric traditions of Hinduism, he is considered the supreme being. So, so that music is kind of like from the praising this Lord Rama, right? This god here. And one of the first lines is, "Hail Lord Rama, who shines like the full moon and removes bondage to sin." And which is interesting because it almost kind of like ties to the idea of perhaps Asher being a bondage to Whitney. You can say, like he himself even says that the idea that he's bringing her down, in the last episode. So you can kind of interpret that as being him making Whitney more sinful, like, because of his past at his previous job at the casino, enabling gambling addicts, etc. Him being all business minded, in general, and not have been as empathetic as Whitney was, which of course he's kind of turning his head later on, where Whitney kind of like reveals herself, to be, mocking Asher for being goody two shoes, and she herself not being so caring about the people, not caring so much about Alejandro, more concerned about the show, and her being the Green Queen. So maybe she was also at the same time being a sort of bondage on Asher, and so they themselves are kind of like pulling each other down, and somebody had to give, and perhaps it was Asher that lost in the end there, and had to go into space so Whitney could become the best person she can be, perhaps, and so and that song also says something like "Moon like Lord Rama," like a full moon, it says the song. So I guess you can kind of see how Asher was kind of like a moon revolving around Whitney, and now maybe he isn't going to go too far into space. Maybe he'll just float around and be a satellite of the Earth, a satellite of Whitney, perhaps. Maybe that's his destiny, and his corpse would just be among the satellites of Earth, alongside the moon, to keep Whitney centered, So yeah, I mean that's but yeah, definitely the music is great. The sound design as well, the score, all of it, like really haunting. It really goes with it all, right? Yeah, I mean that's I guess pretty much the breakdown. I do kind of want to maybe go through maybe some of my favorite scenes from the series, and maybe just have some final thoughts here. But I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, so just to get some more water and take a little bit of restroom break. But yeah, I'll be right back, and then we'll get to, well, if you're watching on the VOD, I'll have a little chapter section where you can like skip to, in a second. All right. BRB. Okay. Yeah, just a quick little break. Okay. So I kind of want to go down the let's go down just talk about some of my favorite moments, and then we'll of the whole series as a whole, and then we will maybe wrap up with some final thoughts. I did make some notes here. As for visual aid, we might just keep it on there for the visual aid. Maybe even just go to the beginning here. So this show, like it had a lot of great moments. Like I said, this is like could be considered, maybe considered a classic show of prestige TV coming up here. We're gonna have to wait a little bit just for people to really absorb it, and really analyze it all and like get into the zeitgeist. But I'm sure, like, definitely one of those shows that will be talked about for a while. Like, I can totally see that, and I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of video analysis about the show in general. Just some fantastic imagery, fantastic stuff. As for, I have a list here of like little moments, top moments. Okay, well, there's a bunch of moments in the show. Probably there's a lot of like funny moments, like laugh out loud moments too, cringy moments, of course. A lot of people, will refer to it as the cringe show. And there are some of that moments, but some of those cringe moments, but I feel like it's more just like it's just more like a dark comedy in a way, and but there's like some gags, even like I'm thinking back of the moment where Asher it goes to his old casino job, tries to hack into the computer, right? And he drops that sports drink all over the floor in Bill's office. That was a funny scene. That scene could kind of been like almost a scene in one of Nathan Fielder's old shows, Nathan For You or something, or it was that kind of like gag comedy, practical comedy you would see in a Comedy Central show or something like that, right? He like spills the drink and then he pours it on Bill, to kind of like in a way that it felt like a little mischievous moment on him, like kind of revealing like his inner little impish self that it lacks like empathy, a little bit sociopathic, a very revealing moment for him, for his character. And then he pours it back on himself, just to show like, oh look, it's just silly little fun, it's not a big deal. That was one of the standout moments. Another standout moment was Asher breaking in to to Nala's house. Like that was super intense, especially you got the perspective of Nala and her sister, coming back from school, just hanging out. Like typical, sisterly young sister bond, banter, and then like a strange knock on the door and like someone like drilling in a hole in your lock and like busting into the door. Like that's fucking scary, especially at how old they are, like 10 or something, and like or younger even, and then Asher comes in. It's like you think like it's gonna be some burglar, but it's good old Asher, the homeowner. Like that type of comedy is like that dark comedy is like the exactly what the show is doing all the time, like, and it's great. That's a pinnacle or an epitome of what type of comedy you expect in the show. That's like horrifying, but also uncomfortable and just also kind of just funny in general. Of course, then there's like even more horrific moments, like the chiropractor scene with Abshir getting his neck fixed, I guess, even though he looked like he was being tortured. And it was one of those moments that where like this in the series where you're not, it ends with him on in the chiropractor room, like almost like completely like unresponsive, right? Like is he dead? but no, he's not. And it cuts away. You don't know, and then later on, you you see that he was okay and everything. But it's like those type of moments are common throughout the series of like kind of like teasing you, thinking like something bad is going to happen, and because you expect it to happen, because that's what you're expecting in these shows, but then it doesn't. It's just kind of like another day in the life situation, similar to other key scenes, the Dougie breathalyzer scene, where seeing two scenes of those actually of him like testing himself while driving, seeing whether he's drunk or not. Like you thought, I thought that was going to lead to a big accident later on, but nope. He never got in a car accident again. It just those moments like built this tension and played with our expectations that something horrible was gonna happen, but then didn't. Instead we get at the end of the season we get Asher flying to space. Who would have thought that? There was that funny moment with Asher and Whitney doing the sweater gag for their Instagram. That was hilarious because it's like when you first see it, it's like it feels authentic, like an actual funny moment that a couple would have, getting the sweater off and it gets stuck, and then they try to recreate that, and then that totally felt forced. But again, the whole thing was an act because we're watching a TV show, so like just again playing with that reality versus fiction and a meta commentary on acting in general. That was another great scene. The whole relationship between Whitney and Kara was great. Like, just like the vibe between them both. How Whitney wants to be considered an artist when she's really not, like at the level of Kara. The art show that Kara has, Whitney wanting to know the meaning of it, and then we go to the art party. Then we go to the art party, and it's basically like Whitney fabricating a whole little friend circle for herself, an image of like her being the cool artist chick, and then that moment where she asked she asked Kara to explain the art and say that her art is unique and wonderful, and she's proud to have it in her home, like coaching her into which is similar to what Dougie was doing with Asher, so it kind of echoes that. At that point, Whitney kind of like takes some of those aspects of Dougie and coaches with Kara to do her bidding in a way, or like to say what she wants, to put her in a good light. Make Whitney seem like an amazing artist who, like this indigenous native artist, great artist, respects her, as an equal, And then the moment where she asks her to like explain the art piece, and like how Kara, of course, feels like she's being, exploited and constantly being used by other people, particularly, white people in power, privilege, rich people, the art collectors, etc. And people are asking natives to give so much of themselves, etc. So it's like, and Whitney is like, in a way, like it feels like, is she aware that she's doing that exact same thing with Kara at that very moment? It's key awkward comedy there, of the show there. And then we see her later with another interesting scene was Whitney's confronting or seeing Kara at the massage parlor, and her being her masseuse. And that's like confronting their class divide, and she decides not to go through with it. And then of course the super revealing scene of Whitney mocking Asher, for being a goody two shoes, or for cosplaying as a good guy, right? She mocks him relentlessly. It's like very, very harsh, a thing that typically could be a sign. Typically, is a sign of like, this relationship isn't going well, and y'all should probably break up, right? to debase him in such a horrific fashion, you know. And then and yet Asher decides to stay and double down and bow down to Whitney basically, and be the perfect husband later on, right? You know, and that scene, you know, and another highlight is in episode 9, the moment where Whitney can't stand to tell Asher that she wants to break up or wants to, you know, explore different people. Has to do it by showing him the interview scene for the show that they cut out, and Asher coming back in the room, like blubbering, you know, really awkward way of like, you know, again, like groveling, almost like doting, to have Whitney have him back, and like, oh, like he's gonna be great. He knows her, and you know, do whatever he can. And then Whitney realizing in that, you know, with her, just in her face, her reaction, like, oh, she's like stuck with this guy, you know. And then, you know, in this final episode, we see that, yeah, she's accepted it. She's gonna be with Asher. And of course, the whole sequence of Asher getting stuck on the ceiling, getting sucked up, and then eventually into the atmosphere and past it into space. That's definitely going to be a memorable moment in TV history, right? Right? I think so. So a lot of great little moments, and just in general, also just like the camera, like how the camera floats about, how it peeks through fences, peeks through windows, acts almost like an entity. That moment where, you know, we see from a perspective of someone driving a car to set, as if like someone's spying on them. But really, I guess it turns out it was more of an aesthetic choice, and it wasn't really there wasn't like a surprise twist of a secondary, a third unit of camera crew that like was recording something else. You know, Asher, Dougie, a third party weren't behind a secretive film crew. There was no. It was just mostly an aesthetic choice, and and mostly like it seems that you can explain it different ways. You know, Benny Safdie has said that he wanted to kind of replicate what he was saw on Candid Camera, like the old TV show about, you know, just like a hidden camera TV shows, you know. And so you want to replicate that aesthetic, and he did a pretty good job, I think. But you know, you can sense, maybe you can even explain the idea of like perhaps that shot in episode, I think it was episode 9, the opening shot of the camera within the car of someone driving. Perhaps that was again a spirit of Espanola, a spirit of Earth, a higher power. Maybe it was a god type of being, right? Looking in, possessing through the eyes of somebody just who was parked there, and not necessarily like they weren't necessarily spying on Whitney or anything. They were just like happened to be parked there, and the entity was just looking on, and they were going towards the shopping center, right, where the filming was taking place, coincidentally. Maybe the entity, yeah, was possessing that driver and took control of them, you know. Maybe, you know, there's different things. So like, what, you know, we already talked a little bit about what it all could mean, you know. And you know, maybe that entity is just a representation also of the viewer, you know, of us watching in. Like we're kind of playing of God in a certain way. Like we're observers observing what's going on in the show. Like we're sitting down in our couch in our room and on our bed, wherever you watch the show, in theaters. Like they did screen some of these episodes in New York. We're peering in, via the camera, and so that whole thing could be just a meta exploration of us as viewers, as gods, as observers of this of these people, Whitney and Asher, and what they're going about and doing, while they themselves try to perform for their TV show or for each other or for the community. But as far as like thematically, like what it all, what it all means. I mean, we could go through different themes. The idea of, like, as I said before, performance, being self-aware. I think someone at some point mentions that, like, people who, I think the guy who teaches the joking class, right? He says that, like, oh, people like people who are self-aware. He's talking about self-deprecating humor, right? So, like, it's good. Like, people who are self-aware are likable people, right? Because they seem like they're real, authentic people, right? Who have that emotional intelligence. And so that's kind of what Whitney and Asher have been lacking, and perhaps what they were trying to achieve. And I don't think they fully achieved that at the end of the series, to be completely self-aware, of their actions and their consequences of building these homes and coming in and kind of like pretty much invading this community for their own benefit, right? And them expecting a reward, expecting praise from Abshir for giving him the house, expecting people to love them, because they're checking all the boxes, right? That's their idea. They're checking all the good boxes, but in the end of the day, it's kind of just like a facade, just another performance. But isn't that like we all try to do in a way? We all try to, like, we all have that anxiety. I think even like in one of the Q&As for their series, Emma Stone mentioned it, how, like, she's anxious. We're all anxious about, sometimes, like, how we're perceived and what we say. We don't want to, like, be seen as the bad guys. No one does, right? And so, in a certain extent, it applies to all. But of course, I think these characters are an exaggeration of that, right? And perhaps examples of the worst of us, in a way. And it's definitely an example of the privileged, wealthy white people who gentrify and create these HDT TV shows, right? HDTV shows. And I think that the show has been an effective satire of that, while also kind of like humanizing these characters and kind of like bringing us in that way and having some sympathy, for them, whether it's Whitney or Asher, then particularly also, people like Kara and Abshir, who Brunt and Nala, who get the shortest end of the stick. Yeah, I mean, I pretty much, that's the main thing. I think it's interesting that to see to see, like, Nathan and Emma and Benny Safdie, like, progress in their career and their style of filmmaking, because they all come from, I think particularly Nathan and Emma come from a comedy background. But both Nathan and Benny like to play with fiction in a way. Like, Nathan has these his shows are often like reality shows in a way that kind of introduce fiction into the reality, while the Safdie brothers, Benny Safdie, like Good Times, Uncut Gems, they're full on fiction films, but they and include this aesthetic or this idea of trying to, like, replicate reality. They're almost like almost mockumentary style type of filmmaking almost. So it's nice to see them evolve, this trio and work in this TV format together to create this show, and I think it's great. It's a great pairing. These trio, like it works out really well. Like you know, I don't know. I guess I think I pretty much said most everything, and probably not in the most concise way. A lot of this is just off the cuff. I'm kind of looking at some notes here, but yeah, let me know in the comments more. Let's get the discussion going. I'm sure there's gonna be plenty more videos and essays and articles about this whole thing. I haven't read much of any of them because I pretty much watched the episode last night and then I rewatched it earlier and just started recording this now. So I'm sure there's a lot of things I missed. Again, this is just like my perspective, which is limited. And I really want to know what everyone's thinking. I really want to. I can't wait to see. They're going to do a Q&A, or they already did, I'm sure. Benny, probably even Nathan, might be there at the Lincoln Film Center in New York. They screen the episodes there, so that should be on their YouTube at some point soon. There's plenty of podcasts that talk about it. The Ringer has the Prestige podcast. They talk about it. I also been listening to Decoding TV with David Chen. They do a good one. But yeah, anything else? I'm trying to think. I kind of want to just like make sure I say everything I can, because this will be the last breakdown of the curse, and I guess it is kind of sad. Like we're done with the curse, and I don't see it going for another season. I don't think it will. I don't think it should, really. I think I'm satisfied with what it provided. If they were to do it, it would, I would hope that they would take some time to think about it. Maybe it would be better if like we had new character or something, and now it would take place maybe in that home that Whitney and Ash used to live, and there's that ghost haunting the place, a whole new family moves in, I don't know, or a different community member, who knows. But really, I think it's fine. It's great just by itself this season. Like we don't need anything else. Yeah, I guess that's it. I guess maybe I'll get into the comments and provide other insights if I want to say something else I forgot here. But that kind of wraps it up, right? Thanks for watching. I guess I appreciate everyone here. I know sometimes I get a little bit rambly, and this is kind of just like off the cuff live format, so I'm not the most articulate here, but I do appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate the comments you guys leave. And if y'all want to see more, just subscribe. I'll be putting more stuff. I do tend to do some more breakdowns of movies and shows. I don't know what I'm going to be doing next. I'll probably like do more breakdowns of upcoming movies and the ones that are like nominated for the big awards. So might do like a breakdown of those movies. We'll see. There's not really a major show that I can think of that's coming out anytime soon that I want to do a breakdown of. But maybe, I don't know, something could pop up and I could decide to. But yeah, follow the channel. You can go in the description. There's more links. There's my Linktree link in the description of my About page, where you can follow me on other platforms. I appreciate the feedback. I appreciate all that. I do have a Mastodon and a mas.to/@moonbath, which I try to update with what's going on with what I'm doing. Usually, just lately been posting links to these videos and also like my reviews on Letterboxd. Yeah. All right, folks. I guess I'll see you later. That was a curse, man. That was just sublime, really. You know, really lets you really like leaves you thinking, and I like that. I like that in the show. And, you know, it's a big issue. You can interpret it how you will, and I'm again excited to see all the different interpretations. All right, folks. Bye bye.